Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and today we have another very interesting conversation with a special guest. His name is Keith Mitchell, and Keith is a former NFL player, and his story is very interesting. What happened was after he had an injury that left him paralyzed, he turned to yoga, meditation, and holistic health, discovering that true resilience begins with the mind. So, of course, is very curious about his story and what it is that he practices today. So, he took this blend of his unique journey as a professional athlete and he blends it with what he learned studying with yogi masters and really focusing on wellness in terms of what we ingest. There's just so many layers to this beautiful story. But ultimately, he ended up writing a book called the Mindfulness Mastery Playbook, 8 Strategies of Winning the Game of Life. And there are a lot of practical tools in here, things that we could all learn from. I was really quite surprised and impressed with how he took a lot of spiritual concepts and made them very practical. And again, weaving in this experience of also being a professional athlete. It was a very easy and interesting read. And so we had a very wonderful conversation about all of this. And I'm sure some of the insights will give you your own aha moments. So, again, you can learn more about the work, the book, the Mindfulness Mastery Playbook, 8 Strategies for Winning the Game of Life. Of course, the link will be down in the show description. And you can go to his website, thekeithmitchell.com, and learn more about what he offers, including retreats and online courses. And he has an upcoming retreat in Tulum, Mexico in February. I think he said it's around Valentine's Day. So you'll hear more about that in the conversation.
Squeeze it all.
Okay, everyone. Today we are here with Keith Mitchell, who has authored a new book that I can't wait to talk about. Also, former NFL player and a teacher, a facilitator. There's so much to your list of what you share, and we'll get into all of that. But first of all, just thank you for taking time to be here today.
And thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the experience and looking forward to this amazing conversation.
So am I. Okay. So this is a thing I told you right before we recorded. I did look up a little bit about you and saw that you played for the NFL and had this terrible accident that then led to where you are in your path now. But one of the things that really struck me was this somewhere in the book you said about not being traded to a new team, but traded to another way of living. So
Mhm.
could you give us just a little bit of background of where you were in life prior to this dramatic life change and shift happening for you?
That's a great question. So, really, what I would say, I've subscribed to a character, which we typically do. We tend to trade ourselves into the accountant, to the whatever job title we take on, alphabets and so
Right.
forth. And so, unlike in those careers, in sports, it doesn't last forever, and there's a cap. And so for me, it was an integration or transition that I wasn't prepared for, ready for, didn't even know existed. And in some cases, to my peers, no disrespect to them, but they stay in it.
Hmm.
It's like, how much can you talk about football in a lifetime? Is this all I can do is football? And granted, there's a lot of money and economics in that industry, but there's such a vast world that we live in. And I find it very interesting that I didn't, and I guess as I was looking at this and coming out of my own understanding or coming to my own understanding, I wanted to be so much more. I realized an opening to be a human and having the capacity to do all these different things. So for me, I was just trying to put it in a terminology that people could really connect with what I was going through mentally, because I was using the terminology that I only knew. And
Right.
so now I began to expand my terminology, expand ideas about myself that expanded me into all these other aspects. I just shared with you about 4 or 5 countries that I'm doing this and that. It's like I never even knew that that was possible.
Well, it's interesting you say
Yeah.
that. So, just to give some context, I want to let everyone know, and of course, the links will be down in the show description. But you wrote this book called The Mindfulness Mastery Playbook, 8 Strategies for Winning the Game of Life. And again, you having this background, this NFL background, I wouldn't say I had an expectation of what the book was going to be, but I had no idea how interesting it would be. And I will say before we dive in more that you do such a great job of taking concepts and words and even common jargon within this realm of spirituality, but you really break it down in a very practical way. And you pull a lot of references from the experiences that you've lived. And it's interesting because you just said, I forget the word you said, but basically vocabulary. That was a big thing that struck me in your book about language and how that's so important to how we not only are able to express ourselves emotionally, the scope of that, but it seems like you are tying it into this deeper relationship with ourselves in life. So I wanted to know if you could share a little bit more about that, why language stood out so much to you.
Because words should be an attribute to you instead of a detriment.
Mm-hmm.
We should learn how to use words as tools instead of that move us in a direction. Because if you believe in prayer, you believe in mantra, where we're casting these ideas out and we're putting these spells over ourselves, not knowing. We're
Mm-hmm.
diagnosing ourselves, in a sense, misdiagnosing ourselves with ideas that begin to create glass ceilings and handcuffs mentally around our thinking. And so it's a way to break free of that.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
funny, even you saying that now, it's kind of like you did this play on the word playbook.
Hmm.
And I love the way you did have these comparisons of what that meant in the world of NFL and then how you now apply that to a way of living life differently. So, we haven't really said, but I just want to make it clear for people you were, and from reading the book, it sounds like very determined. You seem to be very strong willed, very focused, very determined. And whatever those driving factors were, it led to you being very successful in your career in the NFL. But then something very unexpected happened. And then all of a sudden, you were in this place where you had to re identify who am I, what am I, what matter, just so much reflection. Could you talk a little bit about that and how you view that now, that pivotal point? Like, how would you describe that as part of your life?
Well, to the first part of what you said, identifying as a playbook, and why I gave the analogy or of that concept, because I see so many players. You get traded one week, and the next week, how did he know the playbook? How did he get in sync with the team? This
Yeah.
lets me know that it can be done.
Yeah.
It's attainable, and I wanted to give some nuggets to showcase this. It's attainables, and so. Uh, so with that concept, I wanted to paint the picture of what it takes through repetition to develop the entity. We spend all this time and energy developing the character as an athlete or a football player, and the intricate parts that go with it, day after day after day, year after year, the same regimented concept. And it's such a competitive one that we have to constantly reinvent ourselves in ways, because you always have a younger class coming up that wants your job, and there's very few jobs in the NFL. So I wanted to show the urgency that it took with the ambition that you have, meaning the desires of your heart, what you expect out of this life. I wanted you to have a kind of a concept of that time and energy with that,
Yeah.
and so you could relate it to, wow, this is also attainable and in the time frame. And so because I see so many people coming out of classes like a meditation class. I don't know how to meditate. There's no reason why you should not know how to meditate. And I'm also a big believer that we don't fire the student, we fire the teacher.
Mm.
you know and so I made it I alluded to that from the standpoint of our philosophies and our beliefs that we have. If they're not working, well, maybe they are working, and the way that they're working is not to our benefit.
Right.
you
Right.
know so I wanted to kind of explain that, because in a sense of X's and O's, as you will, we have a tell of the tape. And the tell of the tape is how successful you are on the field. And when you're not successful, we have to reevaluate who you are as a player and what you're here for. And why are you here? And a lot of times they don't even do all that. They just replace you with someone else.
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm curious now too. When you were before the accident happened, before things changed, did you already have a plan in place or a vision for yourself of what life would be after NFL? I mean, did you ever even have any connections prior to what happened in seeing yourself in doing anything remotely close to what your life became?
You know what's interesting about an industry like that?
Hmm.
You can't have a plan B. As soon as you have a plan B, you're not going to be effective as you would be on that high level.
Right.
And I feel that's in any industry where the 1% mingle. You have to be all in, or it's going to be a no go ultimately.
Hmm.
So I had no hindsight of like, oh, what if this and what if that? Because if I had that, I wouldn't have been there in the first place.
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
so yeah. So my thinking was straight on, and knowing who I am. And what's interesting about that too is when you know who you are, you can go into any room
Hmm.
because you laid the foundation brick by brick. You put the time in. You're ready. You're prepared for any situation. And
Right.
if I can do that in a sport, what does it look like as a human?
Yeah.
You know, because I'm here to advocate for the human experience, because the degree doesn't make you. I feel you bring the magic to the degree. You bring the magic to the industry.
Hmm.
And that's what I want people to gain from this book, to realize what that looks like and how can you implement that in your life to do some of the amazing things that we're here to do. We do it all the time. We do it periodically, hitting and missing. What happens when we connect and really dive in and learn it like that?
Yeah, I think you bring up this very clearly in the book, which was so interesting to me. You mentioned a little bit ago, like, you were kind of in character, which I think most of us are. We have this created identity that's often based on what we think we should want or wanting to appease other people, our parents, whomever, right? A lot of story that doesn't really ever ask what's resonant with us.
Right.
So you, again, whatever was the driving factor, you did really well in that character. And it
Yeah.
was interesting where you said when you were in a space where you couldn't physically move, it wasn't just the body that was paralyzed, but you had to work through even the mind being
Yes.
paralyzed to some degree. But then also asking, well, what do I even want? Which is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think a lot of times people, and this is why we don't question so much.
Hmm.
Uh, I believe we do have these moments of reflection that we
Right.
sit and like, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. Why is my life not connecting? Why
Hmm.
am I not having a successful relationship, career, whatever it may be? We have these epiphanies, these moments like this, and what happens is I feel we don't really search out the answer. I think there's reasons why we don't search out the answers, because we're in a lot of cases are afraid of the answers in some cases, and realize in some cases we're doing it to ourselves.
Hmm.
We're responsible for the sabotage. We didn't commit all the way. We're kind of halfway doing it. And that's where accountability comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is all in the playbook. So I just want to say for everyone, again, what was interesting about this to me is you really do break down so many practices within the realm of spirituality, because most philosophies, traditions, I mean, even religions for that matter, they all point to the same thing. And they all point to the same thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, again, we'll hear these concepts, and I think sometimes people don't question because they don't want to look like they don't know, or
Right.
people don't question because maybe it just went over their head, whatever it may be. But you really break it down again in these very thoughtful ways. There's exercises in the book. There are
Mhm.
great questions for reflection. I mean, it's a good book. I think it's really good for anyone who is already in practice, whatever that may be, but even people who have no idea what this work is.
Mhm.
I like that it had that feel that it could speak to anyone. But I wanted to ask you about part of it specifically because of what you went through. You touch on in the book and in various ways of how we do have some setbacks and
Mhm.
we will have experiences that are challenges, and we have the choice, the opportunity to look at that as defeat
Mhm.
and be really angry about it. Or we can also recognize that sometimes what seems to be a strike against us is really actually for us. So
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. And was that something that was hard to wrap your mind around when you had such a different shift in your life?
That part was not because I was familiar with it. I had did it before. I did it in sports. I mean, no one in my family did a third of what I've done. And so I was the first to think this as an idea, which most people are like, you're out of your mind. Who do you think you are? You know, that's the normal terminology when you say some of these and create some of these outrageous goals for yourself. But like, I had already manifested that without knowing the terminology.
Mm,
And so I knew it was possible. I knew what it would look like for us to work though. And so I was committed to that. And I desired that for myself. And I was not going to be defeated in that space.
yeah, that
Yeah.
that is what was interesting to me because you just made me think of the integration, right? So there's a lot in this realm where there is this not denying the self and being very honest and understanding who we are, who we perceive ourselves to be versus this other aspect of us that we can come to know, but
Mhm.
embodying and integrating, accepting, right? So hearing you say that and thinking about the parts that I read, where again, there's this athlete. I'm not an athlete, so I can't. This is my imagined version of what you said, but
Mhm.
just being so, driven and so focused, and again, just this wild determination and no like failure not an option type of
Right.
mindset. But then this and recognizing there's a lot of gift in that.
Hmm.
And at the same time now being able to come into relationship with this art of surrender
Hmm.
and being more spacious and not
Yeah.
attached. I
Yeah.
mean, that seems like an interesting union to have within yourself.
Right. And what's interesting about that, we do it in sports. You'll take a Hall of Famer, like what city are you in right now?
San
What's
Diego.
San Diego, like say Junior Seau. He
Oh,
was
yeah.
a amazing athlete from the Chargers, right?
Hmm.
So an all pro athlete, he played amazingly, but each offseason he would come back to the basics.
Mm,
He would come back to the basics. You can call it humility, but it's an art of what we did every year. No matter high school, college, pros, you come back to the basics and you start your way back up each year. It's a self evaluation. It's letting go of the things. It's allowing yourself to be coachable.
mm,
It's important. You got to be coachable through this. And so, what that looks like in the human existence, we got to be able to take what we call criticism, which I have constructive advice in the back in the glossary. If you
yeah,
notice, I put it glossary.
you
It's
did.
constructive advice. You got to be able to take some of this information. How? Because in a sense of being biased to yourself, that I make no mistakes. I'm flawless,
Right,
which is not true for anybody.
right.
But so we have to be, again, honest with ourselves from where we are and to be able to take that in so we can actually do better. This is
Yeah,
why I love that saying, when you know better, you do better. So what that gives me is I'm not sure if we really know,
mm,
because if we really knew, we would do. because it's
Yeah.
not lip service. This is action. This is about, this my friend was this, I'm about that action. So if you want that action to take place in your life, we gotta do some of this ugly work here.
Yeah. No, it's and that's the thing. And I'm glad you say that because it's a point that I try to make a lot. I think in this realm there's a lot of perception that if you're on a spiritual path and you want to, become a better human, whatever that means to you, that it is supposed to be pretty. And if you slip outside of that, if you're flawed in any way, then you've done something wrong or you're low vibe or something, I don't know, whatever people think.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, it's like, you know, there's so much beauty in recognizing and understanding the gifts of what we've
Yes.
gone through and how they contribute to our compassion and our
Yes.
strength and all of
Yeah.
these things. And, just recognizing the beauty and the ups and the downs, the challenges
Yeah.
and the wins, so to speak.
Yeah. As they say in the Buddhist term, no mud, no lotus.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
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 Well, I wanted to bring this up too because it's something I wrote down that you did mention the off season.
Mhm.
And again, I know nothing about sports, so this was very interesting to me how this is a time where you do prepare.
Yes.
And it's coming to mind too, this way that you detail practice throughout the book and life being the practice, but this, connection to breath and our mindfulness and just being more aware,
Mhm.
conscious, right? And when I was thinking about that, this off season and this preparation, it made me think of, well, how does he start the day?
Mhm.
Know? Because when I think for a lot of people, when you do come into a practice of meditation or being consciously engaged with yourself, you start to notice a big difference from when you start your day in that awareness versus when you don't.
Mhm.
And so I was curious, do you have a way of that even you recommend that people start? Like what is the the off season, the prep for
Yeah.
your day?
So what that can look like is, like you mentioned, the breath and how important the breath is. The breath is allowing you to, as they've been talking, I see in the social media, to pause,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
Pausing, in my terminology, means processing. So when I process a situation, I'm not emotionally erratic. I can pause, take a breath, intentionally realize what it is I'm trying to say. That's going to help me create a vocabulary that fits and articulates my thoughts. It's also giving me a time to reflect and how to integrate my thought, how to be conscious of the person I'm speaking to.
right.
This can be simple, a concept of off season. And it's a trial and error with implementation of these concepts that I want to level up or change or make better.
Hmm.
And so you can take something like that. You can take something as simple as drinking water. You can take something as just simply reflecting or controlling whatever you want to control in reach of yourself, of meaning that you can, because we can't control all our circumstances. You can control what conversations you dive into, what you do and what you don't,
Right.
uh, until you're ready. It's like we don't play the game until we're ready. And even before we play the game, we have practice. And so in life, you're going to have to constantly, these situations that you've been dealing with for 20, 30 years, 40 years, however long you've been on the planet, that are going to be lingering. And so you can dictate, should I position myself to be in this practice right now? Am I ready for that? Or
Right.
you can hold back and say, no comment, or we can talk about this later, or something like that. You can find your way to deal with these things. This is my suggestion. And so, and then we build a stamina through the process. So now when you get some of these basics, foundational things done, now I have a stamina.
Mm,
Now I can run the mile and know that I'm prepared to run the mile.
right.
So we're in this marathon, we're not even prepared to run the marathon, you know? And this is what I'm trying to allude to when we're talking about the off season. So you make yourself ready. And
Yes.
so when the opportunity happens, you show up.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, okay. No, it's really good. So there's two things that I want to make sure I ask you about. One, I do have to go back to language in the book that you read because the concept around that was just really fascinating. But I also want to make sure to ask you about this relationship between mind and body.
Mhm.
And it's interesting how you described prior, when you were in football, you didn't really listen to the body, and pain was something to push through, which was
Mhm.
very interesting because that is obviously still a relationship, a mental relationship of like, no, we're going to just keep moving forward and,
Mhm.
that eye on the prize. But then to come into a different type of relationship where you realize I have to listen to the body. So instead of dictating to the body what it must do, I need to hear what it's telling me it needs. Could you talk a little bit about that? I just thought that was really interesting, that shift for you.
Yeah, we have an exercise we call the horse and the rider, and basically the mind has a concept of how it wants to uh, maneuver, participate in the world, and the body has another understanding of how it can and its capabilities and also its limitations.
Hmm.
So it's an opportunity to align ourselves in a flow where we can actually be on, like they say in the religious places, one accord
Yes.
and one accord with ourselves, align with ourselves. So we're going into directions like with our full presence, our full capabilities. I look at our senses as our intelligence.
Hmm.
We're again, that's going to help us show up. And so this is what my approach to that is about. Like, just getting yourself in a line and like again embodying the concepts that we're using. People come to me and they say, well, I love myself and I have a practice of self-love. I'm like, well, let's quantify where we are with this concept of love, because love is such a wide spectrum, right?
Hmm.
What percentage would you say if we had to quantify how much you love yourself? And I'll give you my percentage when I first started. And my percentage when I first started was probably 35%
Oh,
or maybe 30.
yeah.
That's where I was with love. What do you say you are? And it's not so much about the number and to
Yeah.
be embarrassed about the number, but the number gives me an understanding of when someone else wants to love me,
Yes.
that I can be somewhat understanding because I know how hard it is for me to love myself. And then I can actually benefit and have a love possibly for myself. Sorry about
No,
that
it's okay.
so much. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's a concept like that, of being aligned with what we're saying to what we're doing so we can have the things that we want, the desires of our heart. I think it's the concept of heaven is all around us, but we're so blind and caught up in the clouds when we can't see it, we can't have it.
Yeah.
And I'm saying we can erase all that, eradicate all that, and now we open ourselves up to a whole new potential that we never knew we had.
Right.
Like, I
Well,
said, I'm from Garland, Texas. I'm from Garland,
oh,
Texas. I've been to 78 countries. I'm all over the place. I would have never guessed in a million years this would be my life.
right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's really interesting for a lot of us. I always think that's an interesting thing too, how our lives are all constructed so differently and how much of a hand, our free will is at play, but how
Mhm.
some people literally can have such a regimented, it was like from the time they went into career, that it was the
Mhm.
same thing all the way until the end. Whereas
Yeah.
there are other people that you definitely can see the drastic shifts
Mhm.
and changes. And anyway, that's always very interesting to me. But this thing you bring up about loving yourself, that was also interesting because you spoke about in the book this understanding of what love is in the first place.
Right.
And I was trying to see in my notes, I can't see where I wrote it, but I know you said something about one way you tried to understand love was by practicing unconditional gratitude.
Yes.
And I thought that was very, very interesting. Could you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that and like what kind of lens that gave you?
Well, yes. At first, my definition of love is I simplified it to mean like a lot.
Hmm.
And then unconditional gratitude was the concept of showcasing how much I am grateful for, whether it is if I say I'm grateful for my health, my body, well, then I showcase how much I take care of my body, my
Right.
health. If it's gratitude, if it's loving someone else, well, then I showcase how I show up with them,
Hmm.
uh, and in tune with them. So it's an opportunity that we can actually kind of like in sports. You say, I'm a good player. You say, I'm good. I got talent. I can do this and that. But we put the film on, we put you in the game, and we see. Well,
Right.
see, this is an opportunity by making this a defiant in what we say we want to do. Well, then it's an opportunity to reflect on, am I actually doing it? And then what are my receipts for showcasing what I'm doing? I think we have to see receipts at this point. We have to
Yes.
have proofs about what we're talking about we're doing. If we're doing all these great things, right, we got to
Yeah.
have some receipts to back these great things,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
we have to give ourselves the evidence too, because I think
Yeah,
it takes us from, again, we conceptualize a lot. And I think, you know, we may say a lot of things are what we believe in, and I don't know, but we don't fully understand it. And
right,
unless we practice, implement, and have the experience of whatever we're talking about, it just doesn't hit the same. And it's
right.
almost like sometimes we don't allow the weight and the beauty of what these words and concepts are to really express through us. It stays so in head,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of effort to bring it into the body and allow it to come into the expression of whatever, how we're living our lives. But I
Yeah.
wanted to go back to Keith. You said something interesting again about language, which is really a big deal.
Yes.
And I kind of had to pause and read what you wrote about it a couple of times to really go like, wow. So you were talking about how there was a book that you read that changed you in a lot of ways. But the gist of it was that having a different type of vocabulary allowed you then to
Hmm.
really tap into how you were able to express and even
Hmm.
understand your own
Yes.
feelings,
Yeah.
understand yourself in deeper ways. And it makes me think of those times where we can't quite put into words, we can't articulate for ourselves what we feel or what we think about something. And then you hear someone else put it into words, and then all of a sudden your mind is blown, and you're like,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
it. And it's,
Yeah.
it's like some spark happens because now we can address it in a different way. Could you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that and how that may have led to you becoming such an avid reader, but just that importance of having more language to understand our experience?
Well, again, like I mentioned earlier, those are the spells that we
Yeah.
speak. And in the yoga world, they call it mantras, affirmations, and
Yeah.
what we repeat repetitively. Because when you think about, they say, I think the clinical says 70% of our thoughts are regurgitated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what our thoughts are. Our thoughts are words that we put together. Are they? And typically, our thoughts that are repetitively are negative thoughts. Why are they negative? It's like,
Yeah.
and what happens if we change that vocabulary, change that terminology we use? And what happens, what I see from that, now your conversations look different. It's like a concept, again, back to belief. If you
Right.
believe prayer exists, well, then recognize every word comes out of your mouth should be considered a prayer. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
it begins to be this way. So now when I speak words, I'm speaking with a conviction, not because of what someone said or someone told me this terminology is, but because this is how I know it to be.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a it's an empowerment when we do it this way, in my opinion.
Oh, completely. But it also, because it has a different frequency to it too. It brings
Mhm.
us in relationship to the frequency of the words when they're not just
Mhm.
used so carelessly or
Yeah.
without this personal resonance with it. It does something to
Mhm.
us. It reminds me of chanting, because you could
Yeah.
just say a word, like you could say love,
Mhm.
and you may feel something if you repeat it, but when you really come into the space of letting the essence of that word and the frequency work through you,
Mhm.
totally different experience.
It's true. I have one for you, and I'm just curious. I've never said it, out loud. Really, it's just been in my head. Like a lot of times, people reference God, and
Hmm.
I ask them, "What is your definition of God?" And then after
Yeah.
they give this elongated definition, I'm like, "Well, how does it apply to you?"
Yeah.
And then they're lost for words because they don't know how. Like I don't see it. I'm like, "Well, you're speaking about it, that you believe in it."
Yes.
have a conviction with it. So I give them this terminology: God, generator, operator, and destroyer.
Mm,
Generator, operator, and destroyer. And I want you to consider in every moment you have an opportunity to be that entity, create that energy around everything that you do. Now it changes your perspective.
yeah.
It's the God concept within you. And now what does that look like?
Yeah, yeah. That reminds me of I believe it's like Shiva, was it Brahmana, Shiva, Vishnu, something like this. But
Okay.
the different facets of a creator intelligence.
Mhm.
Um yeah, but you just said something that also was in the book. Oh, I lost it, but it was a good one. Yeah, there's just so many things in there. I mean, it was mind blowing of the way, oh, I know what it was. Speaking of what you just said, there was a thing in there where you're talking about this, and you said, just like when someone tells you to go to hell, and then you just give them the question of, like, huh, well, how should I get there? I
Mhm.
was like, wow, I hope people really get, there's some good nuggets in here to
Yeah.
really, if nothing else, your book, even if someone isn't ready to fully put some things into practice, say they have their personal resistance for whatever reason,
Right.
this book will get you to think.
Mhm.
And I think that is such a huge foundation for a lot of us. Anything that could even just create a curiosity within our
Mhm.
consciousness, because then that already starts to free us from the grip of whatever we attach to so rigidly of what we
Mhm.
think we know.
Yeah.
Definitely, this book is going to make you scratch your head and ask a bunch of questions about how you are living life. No, it's really, really good. I feel like, oh, the time is going so fast. I didn't get to touch on everything. But
Mhm.
speaking of this, another big thing, Keith, in this, just being a human
Yeah.
and in this life experience, the whole idea of acceptance
Mhm.
and being in relationship to truth.
Yeah.
I think that could be a very tough one because of the self criticism, the judgment, the shame, all of these things. Could you talk a little bit about how these things, acceptance and truth, have been so impactful to your life expression now?
Well, acceptance gets us present because it's not about when we get to the other side of the thing we want. It's not about, well, this person over here whose life looks better than mine. It's
Yeah.
it's honoring where you are in this moment
Hmm.
and realizing I'm not running from any of that. I'm here to accept all that. I'm with all that. But you know what? There's some changes that I'm interested in making.
Yes.
And this is something I can change, I can level up on. And so it's an understanding of what that looks like. Even as I want, again, as I want to make these changes, I'm not shaming myself. I'm not hating myself. I'm loving myself through this process,
Hmm.
and I can make some steps in this direction or that direction. Um, that's what it's about. It's staying present in the moment. It's honoring your steps. It's honoring all that you've been through, the life lessons, and realizing, well, I want to make a difference. I want to make a change. I don't want it to keep it the same. There's some other things that's available in this world for me, and
Yeah.
I can have it. And let's see what that looks like.
You know, it just occurred to me too. I didn't even ask you this, but in the book, just so people have some backstory, you ended up literally physically, like at some point, you couldn't move.
Mhm.
And you started practicing, not just practicing, but you sought out people who were really in their practice and expression of what we would call yogis. And
Yeah.
you traveled the world to study yoga. And you also had the opportunity to study with and learn from Dr. Sebi before he passed.
Mhm.
You were really taking in a lot that would not only obviously bring about a different kind of relationship to body, to breath, to mind. And I can't even imagine what that was like for you. But then what made you want to put this playbook together? What inspired you to even say, did you start envisioning like this kind of outline of this is how I can take everything that has helped me in my healing What was the inspiration behind this?
It was a combination of that. I kind of didn't want to put so much to the football in. I wanted to kind of stick to the strategies. I kind of wanted to give a blueprint of like letting people know first you need a strategy, a direction
Mhm.
you want to go, and here's some blueprints to concepts that you can align with that you can gauge yourself through the process.
Right.
And then really the goal is to for you to initiate your own. You can use this concept as a formula, but you can ultimately create your own. And what does that look like? But I think we should all be on our code. And when you bring someone in, they should know how to troubleshoot you in any situation, and
Yeah.
particularly the relationships in those kind of situations. I don't think there's enough discussion about those things
Hmm.
because the trauma that we've been through, it definitely it comes up. And so it's important to express that to what that looks like and how to get you back in. I just call it troubleshoot, get you back online. you
Yeah.
know, I think the iPhone reboots or it kind of gives us upgrades every 30 days or so. We
Hmm.
should have an upgrade too
Yeah.
because we're going through some of the same things. So yeah, it's important that way. I feel.
It's
Uh,
interesting listening to you say this and again thinking about your story and what's in the book. I I wonder if this, not that you felt lost. I mean, I don't know, maybe you did at some point after what happened, but it would seem like this type of intention, but so much direction back towards ourselves
mhm,
instead of trying to just appease and figure out the external, this
mhm,
internalized awareness and relationship. It seems like it would help a lot of people to feel less lost,
mhm,
you know? So aside from just perhaps some of us having this desire to again be a better human or wanting to contribute and help in some way, whatever the catalyst is, for a lot of people it is tragedy, to be honest,
mhm.
that puts us
Yeah,
in, you know, but regardless of what it is, it just seems like at a base level, working with the concepts and the principles in this book, it seems like it would be a great way to help people feel just less lost
yeah,
and more connected.
yeah. I agree with that.
Mhm.
Uh, and the idea is we're not even lost. We just don't have. That's why I call it. Remember, if you remember the concept of mistakes,
Yes.
I got that concept from Layla Africa, Dr. Layla, before he transitioned. He was also one of my teachers. And he's like, when you don't have the tools, you can't be so hard on yourself. We
Right.
didn't know what to do. Life doesn't come with a manual. So we're out here trying to make it. And so it gives us an understanding of leeway that we can be somewhat gracious for ourselves, for at least attempting. So it's a mistake. And so in healing, it's a little bit, again, we have compassion empathy
Right.
for us through the process. And so, yeah, it's just so it's knowing what to do in the situations and having that on deck. I call them resources. So when I'm in a situation like a relationship, I have the resources to sustain the relationship.
Right.
I have a strategy for when I go this way. I can have you help me bring me back this way, or
Yeah.
I can bring myself back this way. It's important because we're going. It's not about if things go bad; it's
Yeah.
when things go bad. It's,
Yeah. You know, it's funny because listening to you right now, I'm thinking this book is so timely
Mhm,
because I think for a lot of us, it, definitely in the last, what year are we in? The last 5 years. Yeah.
mhm,
Um, a lot of people have felt like the rug has been pulled from underneath them in so many
mhm,
ways. I mean, whether it's a lot of us were forced into self introspection and then started questioning everything about how we're living.
mhm,
A lot, the unexpected, you know, dissolution of relationship or career, whatever it may be,
mhm,
people are looking more now. People are craving more now, some kind of guidance and direction. And I think it's nice for us when, not that we want to totally depend on somebody telling us this is take step one, step two, step three, but when we have a foundation
mhm.
that can really help us and we have even support along the way to help us sustain and regain our clarity and strength,
Yes.
this book seems like a really great great for that because, again, I feel like even if you weren't familiar with these concepts that we would say in the realm of spirituality, it gives a digestible introduction because it is so practical. But
Yeah.
also for someone who's been practicing, I can't even think now, I don't know, maybe
Long
15 years,
time.
maybe long time. Yeah. It also made me, yeah, that's what I love about this work, Keith, really, to be honest. I love that no matter what you think you understand now,
Mhm.
there's a potential you're going to understand it differently tomorrow.
Oh,
And
yes.
I think this book really would have a lot of people stretch a little bit deeper
Mhm.
into what they may think they already understand and know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you too, because, again, I only have like 10 more minutes with you. So it goes by so quickly. Aside from the playbook, you do have other ways that you're sharing what you've learned and what you still practice with others. In part, you have retreats. I noticed you also have online courses. Could you talk a little bit about the type of retreats that you have and even what's upcoming?
Well, I have typically done a vitality detox retreat at Dr. Sebi's home in Honduras.
Hmm.
I've been there 25 times. I'm in the process of opening my own clinic now in the States. And so I'm really excited about that. For his retreats, I have a project coming up for Valentine's weekend in Tulum. It's Intimacy Mastery Retreat.
Mm.
And intimacy, as we talk about it, into me, I see. When you talk about mastery, right? And it's not that we're ever going to achieve perfection, but the concept that we're at least curious to know a little bit about something that we're into.
Yeah,
We should know something about it.
yeah,
And so, and what's interesting about that is one of the most challenging situations you will find in our existence naturally is going to be relationships.
mm-hmm.
And are we equipped to have successful, attainable, sustainable relationships? And so that's the concept around that. And so we go into that and what that looks like. It's so funny you bring up the question because I'm suggesting code and stay in questions, and that happened in my retreat, intimacy mastery. The couple, she's like, "What happens when my husband tells me to go to hell?" And then I say, how do you suppose that I go? You stay
Yes,
inquiring. It's perspective. You control it. When you understand the words, you control the dynamics.
yes,
You
yeah,
control it. You're so empowered when you understand the words and you know what to do, when to do it in any situation. What can you not do? That's
yeah,
how.
yes. And I love that too, that that comes up in the book, the questioning. And
Mhm.
I was kind of laughing because I always joke about I'm such a curious person. I question everything anyway. But one day recently, just out of nowhere, it came to my mind that I love questions because that's what expands our minds.
Yes.
It really does. I'm like, I
Mhm.
don't even, if, even when I ask questions, some people may get nervous because they think they have to give you the right answer. I
Mhm.
don't really care what your answer is. I just want to think. Like, I just
Yeah.
want something to expand the
Yeah.
possibility of what I may have been thinking a moment ago. But yeah, again, there are some great practices. You give exercises. I was surprised that the book even started out with like, you're like, hey, before we jump in, let's start with mountain pose. But you
Mhm.
have the timeline strategy exercise. That was really interesting. There are
Yeah.
so many, again, ways that we can apply what it is that you are sharing. And I
Yeah.
think that really is the brilliance of the book. So you have these 8 strategies for winning the game of life. Again, everyone, the book is called the Mindfulness Mastery Playbook. And the link, of course, will be down in the description. I just curious though, one last thing. Did you have anyone in mind, like when you did put this together and you came up with these 8 strategies, did
Mhm.
you have any idea of who you wanted to help, or was it just, were you really trying to have a very broad scope?
Well, first I was trying to just get it out of my head. It was in
Yeah.
my and I wanted to kind of was thinking about again places I had been in my life,
Mhm.
hard times, and like just not knowing where to go for the information.
Yeah.
That's why I went on a quest of searching out all these master teachers to like learn from.
Yes.
And so I was like, what if I put together something simple? And the book that you mentioned, you alluded to, you didn't mention it, but it was The Art of Loving by Eric Fromm. It made the concept of love like a psychology for me.
Mm,
So it's into thinking and how and what we're really talking about when we're accumulating these things of desire and so forth. And so, and just understanding those needs. So it made me really broaden my perspective of, again, the terminology, the words, and what we're after in this world. So
yeah.
I think that was kind of like the thing with that. Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah.
now that you say this too, I'm just curious because it is such a, it sounds like, again, from reading your book, like a drastic shift in lifestyle and mindset and
Yeah.
all of these different things. Were there times, or even now, do you ever kind of mourn that old expression of yourself, or do you only look back and kind of extract the wisdom? What is your relationship with the evolution of you? Like, how do you take that in?
That's interesting because, as the term says, ignorance is bliss.
Mm, yes,
Once you come into the knowledge, you can't be ignorant again.
right.
So
Yeah,
it's like that would be the con to learning this work because when you know,
yeah.
and so it's on you now.
Hmm.
But what I do want to share with people, when you do go through the circumstance, you're never the victim.
Yeah,
You have a resource you can pull from. You have an option to choose from. You have a perspective to gain through the lesson learned. So
hmm,
you're never the victim. You got the tools. We're going to find our ways in situations that can look like victimhood, but we don't have to stay there because we have the resources to get us out of that. And that's really what we wanted to gain through putting this book together, and hopefully you
yeah.
receive it that way.
Well, just so everyone knows, that's also in the book, victor or victim and that choice and mindset. I have 5 minutes left. I'm going to take it. You know what else I wanted to ask you, Keith?
Okay.
I thought it was interesting too, because you do talk about in the book being an observer.
Mm,
And I thought, like, wow, it's really interesting when you think about the type of observer we're being, because you pose the question of what's the difference between being judgmental and being an observer.
mm,
And you said something that, kind of points to being more neutral in our observation. And then I thought too, like, yeah, and even our judgment, that's a type of observation.
mm, yeah.
But I think well, it is. It's a big part of this work, having that ability to view without attachment. So could you talk just a little bit before we go about how important that has been and how you show up now with the type of observer you are?
Well, the interesting thing is when you study your opponent, and
Mm-hmm.
your opponent, in this case, the individual, is going to be the person you used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're in the person that we want to be in the present state, that we're choosing to go in that direction. We're going to have the old way wanting to distract us.
Yeah.
So we have to realize what we're up against. And so the constructive advice, as I call it, we don't want to ever lose that data. That's some important information. And
Yeah.
so we can use so much with that data to elevate what we're, make the corrections where we need. Because again, we're going to always be, open to making mistakes,
Yeah.
So through the process, though, we can take the information and use it to realize how we can do it better.
Yeah.
It's important information. So that was my point with that.
Very important information. I have to tell you, I'm always so thankful on the podcast because I meet so many incredible people, different perspectives, and you never know,
Mhm.
I'm genuinely I'm thankful to have come across this book because I think it'll be very impactful and very useful and helpful to so many people. So for anyone, and really, if you're thinking about how to go deeper into these concepts, even how to create a structure for yourself, some of us like a bit of
Mhm.
structure and how to. Definitely click on the book, The Mindfulness Mastery Playbook. The link is down in the show description. You can also learn more about Keith on his website, which is thekeithmitchell.com. You have the upcoming retreat in Tulum, the
Yes.
Intimacy Mastery Valentine's weekend.
Yes.
And yeah, I would say keep checking back to see what else you have going on because you've mentioned bopping around the world. So,
Yes, yes, yes. And the clinic really get into some of the new concepts of whether it be uh, IV therapy treatments, acupuncture, peptides, stem cells, these types of things, light therapy. And so we're looking to start that in coming up year, next year rather.
wow.
And yeah, so stay tuned too. We got a lot of cool things coming into play. So I'm really excited about the new work too. So
Yeah, well, once
uh,
you do these things and open the center that you were talking about, you have to come back and tell us all about that. But
sounds
thank you
good.
again for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, beautiful alchemist. I want to thank Keith Mitchell again for coming to share his story and the different elements of this book, the Mindfulness Mastery Playbook, 8 Strategies for Winning the Game of Life. As I mentioned in the interview, I didn't even get to ask him all of the questions I wanted to ask based on the book. But I honestly, it's a really good book. And I really loved how practical it is in terms of, understanding various spiritual concepts. So you can learn more about Keith and his work at thekeithmitchell.com. As he mentioned, he has an upcoming retreat in Tulum in February. You can learn all about that on his website. And of course, you can also get the book for yourself. So, thank you again to Keith, and thank you all for being here. Don't forget to sign up for the Alchemical News, my newsletter at theenergeticalchemist.com. Don't forget that we also have registration for the Alchemy Circle and Intuitive Mastery. The Reiki Rays Global Healing Summit starts November 7th through 11th, and the Master Class Weekend is November 21st to the 23rd. So the details for everything are down in the show description. So take note, get yourself registered, and I will see you soon. Remember to always journey in love.